Hello, my dear students, and welcome back to our history class. Let us begin a new chapter, Women and Reform, chapter 8 of our history textbook. In this video, let us discuss status of Indian women, the women's question, Sati and Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Status of Indian women. Indian women had been given a subordinate status to men for centuries. In the 19th century, Hindu society was strictly divided along caste lines. The fate of women depended on the caste they belonged to. Upper caste and upper class women were strictly confined to their homes. Peasant women and poor women had a little more freedom to go out and work. Upper caste women observed Purda. Muslim women were also secluded by the Purda system. Both Hindu and Muslim women were denied education, did not have equal rights to inherit property, and were financially dependent on their male relatives all their lives. Child marriage was widespread. Often girls were married off at the age of 8 to 10 years to men who were usually much older to them. They were often widowed early because of the huge age gap between them and their husbands. Widows were not allowed to remarry, and their condition was miserable. On the other hand, men were allowed to marry as many times as they wanted. There was also no bar on the marriage of widowers. Polygamy was fairly common. The practice of sati, where a woman immolated herself on her husband's funeral pyre, was also widespread in many parts of India. The lack of education also worsened the status of women. Women were denied education as it was felt that they had no role to play in public life. There was also a belief that educating women would make them neglect their household duties, making them unfit wives and mothers. Women were not allowed to participate in affairs outside the domestic realm. The women's question. The women's question. Colonial rule witnessed the growth of a new middle class of professionals. These included people who were exposed to Western education and who realized the need to eradicate these social evils. They came to the realization that reform of Indian society would be incomplete until the cause of women was taken up. Western education brought ideas like humanism, rationalism, and equality into the public consciousness. This led to a questioning of the prevailing social attitudes and customs. The British attitude of racial superiority also made many people examine the weaknesses of the Indian social structure. As the feeling of rationalism grew, many people realized that social reform had to precede political reform. The opposition to colonial rule made them feel that a society riddled with superstitions and backward practices could never hope to attain higher political ideals. Social reform would, therefore, be necessary for political change. However, the process of reform was not without its problems and complications. Reformers did not always agree amongst themselves about the right way forward. The religious orthodoxy strongly opposed any effort towards women's uplift, claiming that it would corrupt Indian culture. The campaign for women's rights was seen to be a result of the influence of Western ideas. Some reformers felt that the laws passed by the colonial government would not help in removing social evils. They believed that only the spread of education would achieve this goal. Some wanted limited reforms only. Certain people said that instead of university degrees, women should be taught things which would be useful in running the household. Some women were not prepared for reforms, while others actively opposed them. Some reformers stopped their activities due to family pressure. Others believed that the reforms were too limited in their scope and wanted more radical changes. After 1857, the British government abandoned its support to reform due to fear of protest, which could lead to rebellion. However, by the end of the 19th century, women were slowly entering public spaces, which had long been reserved for men. They were getting educated, working outside the home and participating actively in politics. Although their numbers still remain low, they heralded a new era in the history of Indian women. Sati. Sati had been a customary practice among the Hindus for a very long time. Many foreign travelers, including Burner and Taverner, in the medieval period left behind their accounts of this practice. It was a cause of both condemnation and fascination among them. Women who committed sati were supposed to have achieved the status of a goddess. It was believed that their sacrifice guaranteed their husbands, themselves and 7 generations of their family a place in heaven. While the decision to commit sati was supposed to be voluntary, many women were often drugged or forced by their families to immolate themselves. In colonial times, several individual officers attempted to ban the practice, but there was no formal order to this effect. Towards the end of the 18th century, there were many campaigns led by Christian missionaries to ban sati. The Hindu orthodoxy, on the other hand, claimed that the practice was sanctioned by the ancient Indian Shastras. Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Raja Ram Mohan Roy is often called the maker of modern India or the father of the Indian Renaissance. Born in a Brahmana family in Bengal, he was firmly opposed to idol worship and caste oppression. He also advocated education as the vehicle of social reform. Raja Ram Mohan Roy came out fiercely against the practice of sati. He used the journal Sambada Kaumudi to launch a campaign against the practice. He was vehemently opposed by the orthodoxy, but he found support from a growing number of people. He pointed out that women were forced to commit sati so that they would not have a share in the property and inheritance of their husbands. He stated that women were bound down with ropes and pressed with green bamboos until consumed by the flames. In 1828, Lord William Bentinck was appointed the Governor General with instruction to take a definite decision on the matter. He declared sati illegal in 1829. The Orthodox sections petitioned the government in England against this order. In response, Raja Ram Mohan Roy presented a counter petition. He quoted from the ancient tract of Manu, showing that the Hindu religion permitted women to live as widows and did not sanction sati. The government dismissed the petition of the Orthodox thinker. So far, we have learned about the conditions of women in India, the questions or the women's questions, the practice of sati and the contribution of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. With this, let us conclude our class for today.